Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening to those in Israel, and thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carl Rubin. I'm currently the chairperson of Israel Programming for the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, also known as FJMC. We are part of an international organization with 20,000 members worldwide. Membership is available as part of your synagogue, and we also now offer individual membership that is open to anyone. Since the tragic events of October 7th, we have initiated a powerful program called Israel on My Mind. Israel on My Mind consists of two components. The first is a personal reflection, where individuals are invited to submit a short piece on their personal connection with Israel. It can be a past experience with Israel, something current, or even something in the future. The key is that it is a personal connection that you have with Israel. We then share many of the reflections with others on our website, which is fjmc.org. The second component of Israel on My Mind is why we are here today. Every month, we will be presenting a speaker who has some deep connection to Israel and will share with you their experience. These speakers can range from those with personal experiences, such as our guest tonight, to those living and or working in Israel, authors, writers, or some component of Israel, including cooking and art, technology, and Israel culture. If you have any ideas for future guests, please reach out to me. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this session, Dr. Stephen Mandel. Dr. Mandel is a clinical professor of neurology at Hofstra Northwell in New York, and adjunct professor of medicine at New York College. He is an ambassador of the American Medical Association. He is also the past president of the New York Occupational and Environmental Medical Association. Within the FJMC, he's the committee chairman of outreach and engagement for the New York Metro region. He's also on the FJMC inclusion, DEI committees, and has written the modules for the Imagine Life program for the promotion of healthy aging. Dr. Mandel also serves on the National Commission of the Anti-Defamation League. Welcome, Dr. Mandel.
Thank you very much, Carl. So today's program will be an inside look at a medical center that was called into action after October 7th Noah massacre. We will explore the responses and challenges of that day, which continues to the present time. We will explore the courage and all the personnel, including physicians and paraprofessionals. Physicians have told me that it was a gut-wrenching experience of seeing so many maimed people brought to the emergency room. We will hear stories of pain, uncertainty, sadness, loneliness, and the coming together as a community as we prepare for the hours, days, and weeks and months ahead. So I'd like to first introduce Rachel Heisler, who is the director of American Friends of Soroka Medical Center in New York City, and then I will introduce the speakers. Rachel?
Thank you very much. Deep appreciation to Dr. Steve Mandel, to Larry Klias, to Carl Rubin, and to all of the amazing leaders of the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs who have helped arrange for today's program, and all of the Friends of Federation and Friends of Soroka who are joining us here today. The Federation of Jewish Men's Club are passionate supporters of Israel, and we're so grateful to them for their profound caring for Soroka and the extraordinary work that they have done to tell our story of what we have faced since October 7th. Now, a word about Soroka. Soroka was founded in 1958 to fulfill the vision of David Ben-Gurion to assure that the desert would bloom, recognizing that Israel would need a great hospital to meet the needs of the new young population, and thus began a great era of growth and development of the Negev, with Be'er Sheva now Israel's fastest growing and perhaps its fourth largest city. The profoundly diverse communities of the Negev, which covers a vast geographic area, depend on Soroka for their health. And Soroka responds with skill, science, and compassion. Soroka's centers of excellence are world-class, and the breakthrough research flowing from Soroka helps save lives throughout all of Israel and around the world. There have been many challenges, yet thanks to the extraordinary leadership of Soroka Medical Center, Soroka is widely acclaimed as one of Israel's leading medical centers. And then came October 7th, and war broke out in a most horrific way. Soroka Medical Center faced unprecedented challenges. No other hospital in Israel, or indeed the world, has ever experienced a mass casualty event of such scope. We are 22 miles from Gaza and positioned and prepared to fulfill our highest mission, which is defending Israel's health. And now I would like to share with you a short video that will bring this to life for you.
אנחנו נכין 4 צוותים, יש פה 4 כירורגים בכירים, הם צוות שלהם אחות.
בית החולים נערך בשבת בבוקר בצורה מאוד נרחבת, עם הכרזה של הר"ן והגעה של צוותים, טיפל במאות פצועים במספר חסר תקדים. האתגרים שיש הם קדימה, ואנחנו נערכים גם להם.
So it's now my pleasure to, an honor to have our two speakers. Each speaker will give approximately a 10-minute presentation, and then there are innumerable number of questions. If you have additional questions, please put it in the chat. So our first speaker will be Dr. Shlomi Codish. Dr. Codish is the Director General of Soroka Medical Center. His impressive educational background includes Ben-Gurion University Medical School, residency in internal medicine at Soroka Medical Center, and a postdoctoral fellowship in medical informatics at Yale University. Following Dr. Codish, we will hear from Dr. Sapir Batan. This was her first solo shift as a psychiatrist in the emergency room at Soroka Hospital. For 38 hours, she treated countless number of wounded, and at the same time, she worried about her family besieged in Kibbutz Erez, just over the border with Gaza. So once again, we'll hear from Dr. Codish, from Dr. Batan, and then we'll have questions for everyone. Thank you.
So good evening from the Negev, where it's relatively warm. And we'll try to do in a relatively short period of time is try to describe the roller coaster we have been going through since October 7th. And just a quick introduction to those who are unfamiliar with Soroka. Soroka is one of Israel's 6 tertiary hospitals with a level 1 trauma center. We're located, as Rachel said, a little over 20 miles from the Gaza Strip, and we're the only such hospital in southern Israel at all. And October 7th, despite our experience with various escalations with the Gaza Strip, developed to be the largest mass casualty incident from terror in a single hospital under fire itself, as 69 air raid sirens went off in Beersheba on October 7th, between 6:30 a.m. and around 2 p.m. So this is sort of a quick framing of this. During the first 24 hours, we treated 671 casualties at our emergency department. And the numbers are I could spend a long time describing the various numbers, all of them which are the largest any Israeli hospital has ever seen, And as I said, one of the largest in human history from terror in the Western world. Rather than go into those details, let me just share with you some photos of what our trauma room looked like during that day. And we all woke up the entire Negev and essentially the entire country woke up at around 6:30 a.m. as air raid sirens went off at a frequency we really haven't ever experienced before. And Soroka was probably the first organization in the country to announce a mass casualty incident, basically calling all hands on board. And as you can see throughout the day, and these are photos really from the entire 24-hour period, there was never a shortage of caregivers. People really poured in from the entire Negev, including people who have retired from the hospitals, worked in other organizations. And the various trauma bays were always surrounded with caregivers. And you can see also the types of casualties being brought in with military personnel, civilian personnel, and this entire day was a continuous import of casualties. The worst hour was between 12 and 1 p.m., where a casualty was brought in every 40 seconds, or 83 casualties brought in that 1 hour period. And rather than describe October 7th, which has been done, and we can share links later to lay articles and so on, I really want to describe the roller coaster this whole period has been. So about 25 days into the war, I get a phone call somewhere around 4 a.m. We need you at the hospital. And when I ask why, I'm told, don't ask questions, just show up. So, you run into the hospital, and we found a hostage who was released in a military unknown military activity, Ori Megidish. And this continued when the hostages returned. We had, and again, this is the story of Soroka during this war, which creates tremendous challenges, is the way the operation was performed by the government is every day a different hospital in Israel was told, you'll be receiving 10 hostages. And we were told, you're ready to receive critically ill or wounded casualties. So typically we'd go into the hospital around 7, 8 p.m., wait until around midnight when the situation became clear, and go home, happy that we weren't called upon. Because if we were called upon, it would mean someone of the returning hostages would be a unique situation. Such was the case with Maya Negev, who was operated on by Hamas. It was a very poorly performed operation and required urgent surgery to repair what was done to her leg. This is her brother Utai, who was released a few days later. And again, probably one of life's most incredible experiences is seeing families unite under such conditions. We were also called upon to treat Bilal and Aisha, two Bedouin kids who were kidnapped when they were working in the fields in Cholit. And we were called upon to care for them because of language and cultural barriers that we can handle better than most Israeli hospitals. And again, in the roller coaster of having treated their family members who were killed that day, caring later for the people who survived, and knowing that their father and an older brother are still held captive in Gaza. They didn't meet the criteria to be released during this hostage release situation. During the past 4 months, we've treated over 2,700 casualties, the majority of whom are soldiers from the war in Gaza. Regretfully, a large number in severe and critical status again, and I'll show this in the next 2 slides. The scenario Soroka is required to perform is the following. SMS message at 3 a.m. saying there's a helicopter landing with 5 soldiers. This is, of course, we get this in Hebrew. This is translated for the audience. Landing at 3:09 a.m. 6 casualties in critical condition with a dog transferred to trauma. In 9 minutes at 3 a.m., there's no one's going to come in from home. People caring for this a CH-53 helicopter will be whoever's on hand in the hospital. It turned out, and it was published in the press, so we can now share the details. This was a elite unit attempt to release a hostage during that night. And this is the scenario that for the past over 4 months, we need to be prepared for at any given time. From this helicopter, the only dead being was the dog. And the army is holding on to it and will hold a military funeral when the final soldier is released from the hospital, which has not yet happened. As a result of this event, we changed our entire hospital's preparation, and we now have a surgeon, an anesthesiologist, and an orthopedist sleeping in the hospital 24/7, so that when a month later we get a similar notice, helicopter landing, home front command, 3:21 a.m., 3 casualties in critical condition, landing in 2 minutes. The people waiting in the ED are a senior trauma surgeon, fellowship trained in Florida, the deputy chair of anesthesiology, and a senior anesthesiologist. This is the group we can recruit within 6 minutes. This is a photo at 3:27, 6 minutes after the SMS message. So this is what's required from Soroka Medical Center. Our proximity leaves a very short time for notification, and we need to be prepared for days such as this, and we didn't translate these messages. Each red circle here represents a helicopter landing with critically wounded soldiers. So you can see 10:25, 11:05, 11:28, 1:50, another one at 2:43 and 7:36 p.m. And each one of these has a critically ill soldier a critically wounded soldier who couldn't afford the time to fly to a medical center in the center of the country. So this is the roller coaster we've been experiencing, days such as these, days with hostage returning, routine care for people throughout the medical center. And this challenge, which is every time a helicopter takes off from Gaza with a critical wounded soldier, we're notified that it might need to land at Soroka. And this is just, a few days in December. Each one of these is a canceled helicopter. But each notice here means our team loads itself. They're prepared. They're ready at the trauma unit. Our staff is ready at the helicopter pad. And we're happy to have the helicopter canceled, most cases, because in most cases it means the soldiers are well enough to travel to Sheba, Ichilov, Beilinson, Hadassah, and so on. And in some cases, regretfully, we read the next day, the horrible words in Hebrew, it's been allowed to release that someone had died in battle. And this is a helicopter that didn't reach us for that reason. But this has been going on for 4 months, and the staff is maintaining an amazing readiness throughout this all. And this goes on and on. Another piece of this challenge is on Thursday, 2 helicopters landed with very short notice. And one of them, a soldier, made it to the operating room and was declared dead there when the surgery was unable to save him from a bullet to the heart. And a second helicopter was a soldier who has a severe gunshot wound to his head and is not going to recover. And the scenario where we get the worst wounded soldiers is taking a significant toll on our staff, and I'll say a few words about that. We're communicating with the staff all the time. It's part of caring for the staff. This is the first SMS message we send at 11 a.m. on October 7th, just letting people know what's going on, giving them a support line, a hotline for support, and a phone number that can give people to get information about the casualties at Soroka, and endless really many messages to staff with news about what's going on and what's happening at the medical center. One of the experiences we learned from previous events is we have a resilient staff run by a social worker with mental health background. And when we announce a mass casualty incident, they report to the ED. So this unit, 2 people, that's all the people that are there, were with us in the trauma unit from 8 a.m., taking notes, trying to figure out what staff members might need more support. And out of about 5,400 employees we have, about 1,700 were identified as groups at risk. This includes orderly staff. I'm sure there's a better word in English, sorry. Our support staff that are move the most critically ill patients, people from wards who don't typically take place in such events, volunteers, medical students, and so on. 282 had personal interventions with our mental health group, and 150 are receiving care, be it a conversational or medical. And we're investing a lot of energy because we know this will increase, and we know support in the community is lacking at this time because the needs are so great to handle this. So this is an ongoing effort that we're undergoing. Our helicopter pad is very large. It can handle 3 helicopters at a given time. Regretfully, this is a non-rare photo of 2 helicopters simultaneously landing at our helicopter pad, and that's what we're prepared to do at any given time. Israel gained significant appreciation, understanding that it's a moment of truth. Soroka is a group to be relied on. It's a medical center you can go to when you have hostages returning, when you have soldiers in critical condition, or when you just have the worst medical event the Western world has ever seen at a single medical center in one day. I want to say a word of thanks to this group who are spending Sunday noon listening to us. As the outpour of support from the Jewish world has been amazing. Not just financial support, which is extremely important, but also understanding that we're one people fighting this horrible situation together. We don't take any of this for granted. And I just want to thank you all for taking part in such meetings. And if anyone, because this was extremely short, if anyone wants any more information, you can just look us up online and, give us a shout out for more information. So I was asked to be brief. I hope I was. And I think we're moving this to Sapir, who probably has a Guinness World Record. It's a worst nightmare for a first on-call.
Yeah, so Sapir will now tell us her story. We'll follow up with questions. And again, if people have questions, please put it in the chat and we'll try to get to each of them. Thank you. Sapir, thank you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you all for taking the time and listening to us and to our stories. My shift started a day earlier. It's around 8 in the morning on Friday. And when the siren started, I was standing in the ER. I had just had a consult. And I was texting my husband. He was with my 2 children at our safe room in Kibbutz Negev, which is located just around 900 meters from the border, the northern part of the Gaza enveloped area. And I think around 7 in the morning, he texted me, we hear gunshots around the kibbutz. And he's part of the security squad of our kibbutz. He couldn't go out of the house because he was our children, but he texted me, there are terrorists inside the kibbutz. And I think I started to realize truly what is going on around 8 in the morning when I received a phone call from our kibbutz asking to know if I'm there, if I can treat wounded people in our kibbutz. And for me, it was a feeling I can't even describe, not being able to be there and to help the people I know and now wounded. My military service was basically to train and teach special units around how to treat trauma patients. This is what I know how to do, and I couldn't be there and do that. And it was a very frustrating feeling. And I can't even explain or describe not knowing when will I ever see my family again, if they're alive or not. After each patient I treated, I texted my husband and asked for an update. And if for a while he wouldn't answer, then I texted our neighbor because I thought that she would know if there are terrorists in my house and she can tell me. And I've never been such afraid in my whole life. It's the most, I don't know, deeper, I can't even describe it. It's a feeling I hope none of you will ever experience. But you need to understand that during this whole time, we meet hundreds of wounded people. The smell of the burned skin of the people that entered the yard stayed in my nose for days. We witnessed people with gunshots everywhere, wounded, burned. And during this whole time, I'm still thinking about my family and what is going on there in the kibbutz, the people I know, what is happening there. At a certain point, I received a phone call from my sister partner. He was a captain in the Duvdevan unit, special unit. Asked if we're okay. He told me I'm on my way to this area. Everything will be fine. We will take care of them. Don't worry. And it was one of his last phone calls on that day, and our last phone call. He died there in Gaza while rescuing families from the safe rooms. And it seems that keeps October 7 ended the day, but we are still living parts of it. And unfortunately, since that day, me and my family were evacuated from our kibbutz. We are now staying at a hotel in Mitzpe Ramon, southern part of Israel. And we need to face everything that comes after that. My husband, he had nightmares after that, always thinking about what could have happened if the terrorists entered our house and what he should have done. And our kids and their troubles, also nightmares and bedwetting. And this is my personal life. At the same time, we're facing what is going on at the hospital, and especially in the mental health system of Israel, which even prior to 7 October was not at her best shape, if I can politically say. But now I truly feel that we're facing a tsunami, and I feel it every day. The amount of people arriving to the ER asking for a psychiatrist is more than double. We see it across genders, ages, religions, everything. For example, just on this Thursday, I discharged a 13-year-old girl from Sderot, evacuated from her house after her first and I hope last suicide attempt. I also been asked for a counsel for a young woman, just after delivering her second son, and her father is being hostage at Gaza, and you need to talk to her and to feel her pain and tell me that to which world she's bringing her son. She's not knowing if her father is alive, if she'll see him again. He's, I don't know, the rock of the family, and she wouldn't believe she'll experience this without him. And this is all things that we encounter on a daily basis. It's not a statistics, it's not just stories. This is people we meet, and they share with us the most deepest experience they had, the most deepest feelings, and we need to face it. We see a rise in depression, suicide attempts, panic attacks, everything. And I say we see it in young children, babies sometimes, and elderly people, and we need to face it. And during the same time, many of our staff members are either like me, people that suffered personally or been evacuated from their house, or their husband or partner has been now in the military, and they need to live like this now, not knowing what will happen, what the future holds. The amount of uncertainty in our life, it's huge. And I just say that, nowadays you start to see the wounded people. You can see people without limbs or injured people with a head trauma or something else. But the wounded souls, the souls of people that have been shattered to million pieces, you can't see. And I'm sure that we'll need to address it in the future, and also now. The future is now. And it's something that is disturbing for me, and I think for the whole country. And yes, I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you. So Friday night, I was at a program that indicated that there are now 2,000 Israelis who have a permanent disability, and probably up to 500 have had a loss of a limb since this time. So I want to get a little personal. So Sapir, and then maybe Shlomi, tell me how you're doing. Tell me what you have done to cope. You told me, Sapir, about a group of women that you've set up. And Shlomi, you have responsibility for thousands of people. Tell me what goes through your mind. So Sapir, maybe you could start.
The phrase in Hebrew, kacha kacha, that depends on the day. Some days are harder, and some days are better. I explain a lot to my 30 years and a half boy that it's okay that mom cries a lot. You need to understand that, for example, I need to explain to him why he can't go back to his home. We lost like the most deepest feeling of a home. And he thinks they're a monster in the kibbutz. And he's afraid of going there because the monster is making some booms, and it's scary. And this is part of our reality. And I think what helps me is that we're together in this. I'm a part of the community. We are here together in this hotel, together in this reality. And we are a group of women that meets every week, that talk about what we feel. And I find myself, share with other people the daily issues that we encounter. It could be how to explain my kid about this monster, or how to continue go to work every day and meet the people and these terrible stories that I need to help them carry and to heal from. So I think the community, it's really what helps me survive this.
And talking about it and expressing your feeling to us. And Shlomi?
I think, like many on our staff, a sense of mission helps. And hearing people such as Sapir and mothers of soldiers who are now recovering from anesthesiology and, have lost a leg but are alive. Hearing soldiers whose first question is, what about my friends? Not how am I doing, and not what will I have to do, but what happened to my unit members? A soldier without a leg who threatened he would go AWOL if we didn't let him go to his friend's funeral, which would have been an interesting challenge for him to succeed in. But, we send an ambulance out. And I guess my shock will come later. But being in the middle of this with this sense of mission, part of how I cope, and it's a sad thing to say, but I went and seeked out the surgeon who had to announce a soldier dead on the operating table on Thursday, to give him a hug and and find out how he's doing, and hear at length about the operation, and I then moved on to the other teams in that operation who I could find, and just let them know we're with them, no one who has been through what we've been through the past 4 months did not spend some time shedding a tear. In my case, as much as possible in private. But the number of of heart-wrenching moments that we have never even imagined seeing is really beyond belief. Probably one of the hardest was a soldier who came in on October 7th and was announced, well, wasn't announced yet, but was considered brain dead. And our transplant coordination approached the family, very delicately as they do. And the mother told them, we know who you are and we know why you're here. Leave us alone. And when the time comes, we want to donate his organs. And the next day we were going by with the president of Israel who came to visit. And his twin brother, and he was pronounced brain dead that morning. His twin brother, who was also a lieutenant in the Israeli army, was lying on top of him weeping. And you saw everyone who was there visiting trying to hide in a different corner because this was just unbearable to see. And part of how we cope, again, is, so I have one psychiatrist friend who I will protect their anonymity, who helps me in such situations. He's retired already, but he got a phone call from me that day.
Right, so the healers need healing, and that's very important because we're all human. We talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, Sapir, but this is not post-traumatic. It's traumatic every day, where, as you said, people don't know whether they ever could return to their homes, their occupation. It's sort of, how do they cope? So you're a psychiatrist. You may not have the answers, but what do you do when as Shlomi indicated, we have these issues? People stressed with a limited number of social workers and psychiatrists. So how do you help people cope? I mean, people, if they're using a word, maybe it's not correct, but they're using loneliness and they're feeling alone and they're stressed. Yes, they're depressed, but they feel lonely. Yes, community will help, but at the same time, their inner feelings are, they're afraid. So maybe you could address that.
I think it's the most important thing is just to be able to find someone to talk to and to address every feeling you have, every fear, to talk about the situation you've experienced. And I think human being, to begin with, we have resilience inside us. It mainly depends on the situation, on the society we live in, and the event itself. The event we can change. What happened, happened. Some people experience it this way or another. And unfortunately, there are horror stories and people need to continue to live with it. But I think that these circles of help, the closest one, the biggest one, the community, and also later on the hospital if needed, this would help, because most of the people won't come to the ER if they don't usually they receive the help they need in the community, okay, part of the what we can provide. But I think that the big difference now is the numbers. It's truly the amount of people that's seeking for help is just, I'm afraid sometimes it's too much than we can handle. But I'm optimistic. I don't want it to sound all dark, but our reality now is difficult, and it's part of dealing with it.
Shlomi, you indicated that how prepared you were. You prepared after the COVID crisis. But what challenges did you face now that you weren't prepared for? I mean, were you prepared? How were you not prepared? How do you think, God forbid, this should happen in the future? What do you see as needed? Tell us, how you triage people. Was there enough blood? Did you have to use outside resources? I mean, how do you, besides as an administrator or a physician, how do you handle the patients, their families, and then the community that's always looking for answers.
I'm fairly certain we don't have enough time for me to adequately answer that. I'll try to be succinct in various aspects of this. So Soroka trains and has had, regretfully, many war situations. But if anyone woke me up at midnight on October 6th and said, what's the largest conceivable number of casualties you could treat in one day, I would have said 300, because that's what we train for. 300 is the situation where we're supposed to say, no more. Bring no one else here. And we treated over 670 people who came in through our doors. And if you wake me up at midnight today, I'll say the answer is as many as you have to bring in, because if you're the only place people can come to because roads are being attacked, you're going to care for everyone. We're working on describing our protocols. We deviated from protocol in almost every single aspect. We went as far as the protocol will take you, and then we're creative, which is what Israelis do. So interestingly, you ask about blood. There's several black holes in our memories of that day. I'm sure everyone I've spoke to has the same memory, which is you remember you spoke to someone around 11, but you're not sure who and why. Or, you saw this patient, but all you know is that you saw them. So at 7:45 a.m., I decided to ask for more blood from the central blood bank. And I have zero rationale for having done that. There was no information to justify that, except that it was a Shabbat and a holiday, and that we're probably doom sinkers. But we were not short for blood at any point during the day. We gave whole blood, O-type O blood, despite only having 7 units at the onset. We're an hour away from Tel HaShomer. So an enormous amount of decision-making that went on. And one other thing that I think Israelis are really good at is we don't really have these steep hierarchies. So many decisions were made in the first few hours that I was only 50% sure of, but my team was adamant about. And the error of not making a decision is often so much higher than calling 1,000 people in for no reason, that you just go ahead and we overreact rather than underreact. A triage, we're now working on the scientific side of it. We over triage 3-to-1 compared to under triage. So many more people went into the trauma room than needed to, but almost no one missed out on receiving care in the trauma room. And in the chaotic situation of 600 casualties, that probably saved lives. Was a conscious decision ever made? Not that I recall. It was really a whole bunch of really capable people making amazing good decisions, and me just hearing them out every so often, running around saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I think I said no twice during the day. There were 2 ideas I didn't like. And nothing would have happened if I had said yes. Maybe it was my managerial DNA saying say no sometimes. But really, we wrote the book on many aspects of how care should be provided in such a mass casualty incident. We have numerous lessons that we're going to share with the world. We're working on the articles that will describe, for instance, our clerical team, the people who open charts, have a very large turnover. They get paid minimum wage. They don't stay very long. And it turns out almost our entire cadre was undrilled for mass casualty incidents. So we needed to correct them for several hours throughout the day. Didn't affect patient care, but created a lot of what we call in Hebrew balagan. Young surgeons didn't know trauma protocols for mass casualty incidents. So we now realize we need to train at least every half year the incoming surgeons for residencies. I don't know if Sapir was ever trained on how to treat a mass casualty incident in a psychiatry situation. I know Gal came in fairly early and was able, to provide on-job training. So many small lessons such as this, and some are absurd. We don't have a protocol for rape victims coming into the ED as part of a terror attack because the scenario we trained for is suicide bombs. We now need to have something that will allow a young woman an environment where she can speak up, because when you have 100 people in a room and it's very crowded, we might have missed something. and that scenario. So we're working very hard on getting all of those lessons on paper because they will help other hospitals in the world that will eventually face a similar situation, regretfully.
So there are a number of, there are many more questions, but let me just go through a few things. Number one, I asked you, Shlomi, on a previous program, did you see any terrorists or Hamas or suspected individuals that came to the hospital, and how were they treated any differently? And you gave an answer, which could you repeat?
Oh, I have to be consistent. It's no problem. During October 7th, no Hamas terrorists were brought into any hospital in Israel. Following October 7th, we have treated dozens of Hamas combatants, some of them directly from Gaza, some of them from prison sites across Israel. We treat everyone regardless of who they are, what they did. We're a medical center. We're not a criminal system. It creates a significant burden on staff, certainly staff who lost family members and so on. The one arrangement I have with the Ministry of Health is that we will not admit terrorists into intensive care. If that is needed, they will be transferred to another hospital, simply because our intensive care is full of dying soldiers. At any given time, there are 2 or 3, and their family members don't need to be exposed to that. I'll say 2 things about it. One is the day we stop treating anyone is the day we lost the war, not just with bullets. And the other side is hopefully someone on the military side is making sure these people get what they deserve, be it justice or anything else. Extracting information and anything else. We're a medical center. It's not our job.
Now, Sapir, we're sponsored by the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, and we're a Jewish organization. People have asked me, what is the role in terms of healing and spirituality and belief in God after October 7th?
That's a difficult question. I think that really depends. I've witnessed like both sides of this equation, like people that many people that asking God like why this has happened, like why to us, why on that day, and really finding it difficult to believe in God anymore. I grew up in a religious home, and I must say that most of the, not all of them, but many of the kibbutzes in the Gaza envelope area are secular, but all, of course, Jewish. And I think that some people now, some of the survivors feeling that God is actually with them because he saved them. So I think you can see both sides. I'm not sure exactly what I believe in, because I think it's difficult to believe in God after hearing these stories. But I hope not.
I have one last question here, or 2 questions. Someone asked me about volunteer services, and Shlomi, could you comment, because people think they can come for 24 or 48 hours and volunteer. It's, yes, important to show up, but what is the volunteer status and your perspective?
So we've had several volunteers who have been very helpful in certain fields. As a rule, we prefer people who speak Hebrew and can come for a significant amount of time. If the intent is to help provide care. And a volunteer, we've had a few in eye surgery who actually allowed staff members to go off on vacation. Take some time off because we had someone from abroad. It was their specific specialty. So that could be very helpful. People coming for a shorter period of time, I would recommend coming as part of a group or a delegation. We're very happy to host people, show them around, let them be part of what's going on, but then it's not really hands-on. There's also a certain amount of bureaucracy that needs to be you need to go through to get your license to practice medicine in Israel. And again, we consider this part of the outpour of support in general, and we're very appreciative of it. We just try to tailor the type of volunteerism to what people do. It's probably, if you're going to come for 2 days, I would say pick oranges somewhere. And it might be more useful than spending 2 days trying to figure out how our EMR works. It's worse than whatever you've ever imagined.
So,
For the physicians in the crowd.
So what, Sapir, and you indicated, which I was told, that there are 9.2 million people in the land of Israel and 800 rehab beds. So that seems like it's a challenge. So let me ask you one last question before we close up. What do you want to tell people? I mean, what do you want to tell people? Do you want to tell people about the medical center? Do you want to tell people about Israel resilience? Do you want to tell them about the pain? I mean, in a few words, maybe Shlomo, why don't you start and then Sapir follow.
So the two major challenges facing Israeli society now are going to be physical rehabilitation and mental rehabilitation. Thankfully, physical rehabilitation will be shorter. We're now back to a wartime influx of casualties. People from October 7th are starting to get released from rehab. So we're probably going to need a year or two. I mean, God knows how long this war is going to take to complete. But rehab will be a concentrated effort. We opened the new rehab board, fully equipped, thanks to support, largely from American Friends of Soroka. Expensive rehabilitation equipment that will serve us moving forward, but will answer the Negev's needs. Again, knowing that this is something that you can, will be, a year or two, but it's still short-lived. I'm more concerned about healing of communities, not even just mental health, just healing of communities. What will happen to the many communities that we all visited on Shabbatot, people who work in the medical center and so on, and this healing will be will take on so many different shapes and forms beyond just mental and the physical rehab aspect of it, that it's hard to imagine where to start. And this will create burdens on Israeli society. And a whole issue we didn't touch on is the healing of fractions within Israeli society, which also needs to take place, because there will be a day after the war when right and left need to learn to live together again. I know the US is not a stranger to this. Jews and Arabs, and even fractions along religion lines with, serves in the military, doesn't serve in the military. And these will all be healing aspects that we have to deal with as a society if we have a future in this country.
Thank you. Sapir?
I completely agree. I think we'll have to deal with many issues in the future. But I would like to address the people that are listening now, because I think that, not being, being active, listen to the stories, taking part of this, even though you're far away, is giving us a lot of strength. For me, telling my stories, and for you wanting even to volunteer and to take part of what is going on and maybe visit our kibbutzes and places, it gives us the feeling that we're not alone, that we are one big community of the Jewish people, and that there's a future. Maybe we can make some things better out of this horrible war and this current situation.
So before I turn things over to Carl to close out this program, just wanted to thank you for all the service, dedication, sacrifices, and high quality of care. In our synagogues and our services, we sing the song Yachad, Y-A-H-A-D, that we are together in a community. So how do we rise to the occasion to make people feel as safe as possible? Healthcare has been very challenging, and you're there on the ground. And there's one thing we can offer, is our sense of gratitude. And to all of you, you are our heroes. Thank you. Carl?
Thank you, Dr. Mandel. Well, again, I think I speak for virtually everybody on this discussion. This has been a fascinating experience for us all. Thank you so much to Dr. Mandel, Dr. Codish, and Dr. Baton for sharing your time and your experience and for joining us today. I mostly appreciate your deep and amazing personal stories, and I'm sure a lot of us will be thinking about this much in the future and discussing it amongst ourselves. Just a couple of very quick themes that stuck with me, and things don't always stick with me. I have to read things before I fully understand them, but just hearing about, concepts, there's never been a shortage of care given. That's such a beautiful thought. The roller coaster you're all feeling, the amount of uncertainty, which is so difficult to deal with, different ways we try to cope, healers needing healing, and just the resilience that we all have and share with you. Thank you for sharing these wonderful stories. We at the FJMC continue to be committed to keeping our friends informed of current events in Israel, make our communities aware of Israel's history, and assist our friends to advocate for Israel. If you have any ideas for future Israeli On My Mind webinars, please reach out to me. And thank you very, very much for all you're doing for each other and ourselves. Be well.